I've toyed with writing a memoir called My Dumb Feminist Life, which would examine the choices I
Uh-oh.
made in fealty to
Uh-oh, we got
feminist
some
narratives
regret.
and how
Uh-oh.
self-sabotaging so much of it was. So I'm so interested to explore your perspectives on this, and I'll let you just open it up. What's kind of do you want to say a little bit about yourself first and kind of lay out a sort of the arc of how you've evolved in your thinking?
Well, one of the things that struck me about that particular conversation was, I mean, A, it resonates because I wound up childless myself and it wasn't necessarily intentional. But I
Uh-oh.
also noticed, and I'm thinking you're all a little younger than I am, right? When were you all born on the panel about
Um, I was
Gen
born in
X?
the mid 70s, and then another one of the girls is the same age as me, and two of them are a little bit older, but still probably Gen X.
Yeah,
Hmm.
so I was struck by how the dialogue was. I couldn't find a good man. I couldn't find a man who would commit.
Hmm.
And this is how I wound up like this. And then I think one
Yeah, but
person,
the issue is a
forgive me.
lot of them could find a man that would commit, and they know a man that would commit, but they just don't like that man. The issue is a lot of them are ending up childless because they're looking for a specific type of man, and they want that man to commit. They want the man that every woman wants to only want them, right? So that's the issue. That's why people are just waiting and waiting and waiting until they just end up childless.
Me if I can't remember everyone's names right now. I watch every episode and the discussions are all so interesting. But I was thinking, I know what happened because I lived through that change. And it's sort of like, if you look at the French Revolution, the people who were coming of age right as the Reign of Terror starts would know something more than the people who are living in the aftermath and grappling with that. So my trajectory, my coming of age completely coincides with the sexual revolution when things really changed. And I like to say, and I have said to my students probably at my own risk that TV in the 60s was very family oriented, very much about being a good civic
Yep. Yep.
citizen. The morals were all, I would say, fairly universal, how
Yep.
to be a good person, how to handle the town bully, um, Mayberry RFD, family. And then we start getting into the relaxing the codes, and now there's murder and single police women, Charlie's Angels, which was a huge influence on me, and it just completely changed. And by the time I reach my adolescence, now there is abortion. And I
Yep.
even remember I was sitting on the toilet when I heard on a talk show in the next room that my mother was listening to that now, Roe v. Wade has been passed. And I remember thinking, oh, good, I can do whatever I want.
Wow.
Imagine having a realization finally as a teenager that you can do whatever you want and you choose to be a hoe. Like you just expanded your mind and say, y'all can do whatever I want now that abortion is legal, and you just choose to be a hoe. That's what you choose to be when you can be whatever you want or do whatever you want. It's crazy.
And we also had the pill. And so, this just, it's brand new.
Yep.
And when something is brand new, people tend to react to it, overreact to it. It really completely liberated me and my friends as teenagers into basically having.
Like it's just crazy how everything that is like just like liberation, having the freedom to do whatever you want, all of those things just equate to just poetry. When people were like, "Oh, I'm just doing things for me. I'm just living for me. I'm focusing on myself." All whole language. Like, why does everything, like, if you're doing something for yourself, or you're going on this journey, why don't you go donate your time to help build some camps in another country, or donate your time to do something productive, and that's how you find yourself? Why does finding yourself or having liberation or being able to do whatever you want always equates to just me being able to have sex with whoever I want without consequence? And ultimately, that's what abortion was about. People could try to make it seem like it's about all the other things. It's about women having the ability to have sex with who they want without having the natural consequence of the risk of having kids. And the issue is you have so many ways that you could avoid it, like already with just like condoms, Plan Bs, and just other methods of protecting yourself from this. But they want to have abortion legal because that's the last line of defense for being able to get rid of the consequences for you having having irresponsible sex, essentially. And it's no more than that. That's exactly what she's proving too.
A lot of casual sex.
Yep, there you go.
And it
That's all
even
it's about.
seemed that you were supposed to, like the arbiters of correct opinions were imposing this on us, because I remember asking myself, and I know other women have said the same thing, why am I doing this? I don't really like it. It makes me feel bad.
Mhm.
I'm also, regardless, sort of garnering a kind of a dubious reputation. But then I'm wired like that, and I can't seem to extricate myself from this habit. And, all of the advertising, much of what I was reading in teen magazines
Yep.
was sort of promoting this.
Yep.
You don't have to live like your mother, and you can live like a man.
Yep, they targeted women through propaganda. They targeted housewives while their husbands were gone making a wage. They targeted them into believing that their lives were miserable and that they would live a happier life if they just went out and had sex with whoever they want. And you can do it now because abortion is legal. And then after it got legalized, they tried to normalize abortion. And I think that's what we're seeing the results of today. A lot of women tend to be a little bit more impressionable. Advertisers know this. People in media know this. Women tend to be the ones that spend the majority of the money also in a family. So they target them all the time. And you see it everywhere. And they kind of do it to the detriment of men. Like every advertisement is, your husband is dumb, but here's how you could be smart and show him how to do things the right way. Use our product, right? Like that's kind of the marketing scheme now. So they targeted women through pop culture. Part of it was Cosmopolitan magazine. I forget the girl's full name, but it's something like Sue. She was one of the head publicists of Cosmopolitan magazine. And that was a huge, they were trying to sell a Sex and the City lifestyle, because motherhood and having family values just doesn't sell magazines. So they would literally lie about statistics of like how women see an abortion, if majority of women approved of abortion, which even in the 90s, majority of women didn't approve of abortion. But Cosmopolitan would lie about their statistics in order to promote that lifestyle. And it worked. They sold a lot of magazines and it became extremely popular, but at the detriment of a lot of ladies and their mentality towards families, and ultimately to the detriment of eventually their happiness. If you just go all the way to the natural conclusion of living a life of just indulgence.
And another anecdotal evidence story, anecdotal stories. Anyway, little lack of sleep last night. I had 5 friends that I hung out with in high school, and we called ourselves the Coyotes. And our motto was, we can do what men do, and we can do it even better. And we would drive down the main street hooting and whistling at guys, and drinking a lot. And
that's not doing what men do. That's just being irresponsible. That's just being irresponsible. You want to do something that men do, go change some oil or fix a tire or hold the door open or go pay for a date or go work a job for 50 hours every week for the next 30 years and then lose half your stuff in divorce. Go do some real man stuff if you want to do stuff like a man. You're just being irresponsible. That's not being a man. She's being irresponsible and just saying that that's what she thinks that how men live, so now she gets to do these things. This is silly.
Getting ourselves in all kinds of sexual trouble. And recently we a few of us got together and we were reflecting on that, and we realized that this was a very short window of time, because AIDS comes along in 1983 and changes everything. So I would say that people born between, say, 1958 in 1965 are the people
Mm.
whose life story sort of goes goes alongside this change.
Mm.
And in the essay, A Requiem for the Patriarchy, that I sent to, in the 60s, it really was like there was a dad in every
Yep.
house. There was only one household where there was no father. That mother was divorced and had a daughter named Tammy, and they lived with her grandparents. Um, I am not going to say that those marriages were all happy marriages. I mean, even in my own household,
Well,
it
it's
wasn't.
because they were in a time where they understood the commitment of marriage isn't about the happiness of the parents. It's about providing stability for children. That's the whole reason for marriage. So even if you had moments of unhappiness, you had a duty to your spouse and to your children to make it work. And so, yeah, some people were not happy all the time in their marriages, but that's not what it is supposed to be. And now you see people dating for quote unquote happiness, which is it just ends up being lust. And so people get addicted to that honeymoon phase or that butterfly phase of a relationship. And that's not what a relationship is supposed to be. And people feel like if they don't have that anymore, then they're missing out on something. Anytime you get to a level of stability, that's going to bring, it's going to be boring. But what's also boring is peace. So it depends on how you look at it. Some people look at a stable life where you're just going by routine as boring. Some people look at it as peaceful. I look at it as peaceful. The older you get, the more you start to value peace and just having a place where things are quiet and stable and a routine. Like these are good things for human beings. So yeah, there are some people that are just addicted to the honeymoon phase because they used to going on dates all the time and having the butterflies and having the sexual encounters. They like the chase, they like the flirt. And when they're in a relationship long term, you realize that that's not what a relationship is or ever will be. And so they're dropping out of even marriages sometimes because it's just not enough excitement or happiness. But marriages are not for happiness or excitement. They're for stability for children and to make a commitment to another person to do life together because life is a two-player game.
Wasn't a love match by any stretch of the
Mm.
imagination, but absolutely it was a home.
Mm.
And when I was a very observant kid, spent a lot of time alone watching everybody. And I would say that in most cases, that was the sense that every one of those houses was a home. And for the most part, the mothers were all in those homes.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And then the no fault divorce thing
Bingo.
comes
There it
along,
is.
and it's like everybody sort of jumps on that bandwagon. And by the time I get into high school, there were the kids whose parents were divorced, and those were the cool kids who could do whatever they wanted
Mm-hmm.
because nobody was around to watch them.
Nope, it was no father around to watch them and build structure and tell them no. That was the issue. And the mothers were probably busy working because they convinced women to leave their husbands to join the workforce because that will make you a strong, powerful woman. And so even now to this day, you're seeing that happen at a higher rate. Women are the ones that are choosing to leave marriages. Women are the ones that fought for no fault divorce so that they could do so. And that's the issue. It affects the children. It's not about the parents. It affects the kids. And so in order to pursue happiness to their own degree of whatever that means in their brain, usually the absence of a man, they sacrifice stability for their kids because you need a man in order for kids to be stable. It's just what it is.
Mhm.
We were going into those houses and smoking pot and drinking
Uh-huh.
drinking their mother's alcohol.
Yeah.
And, I would say that those are the kids, when I look back, who didn't really fare off
Yeah,
very well.
but their house was always fun and they always had the best cereal. The kids that had parents that wasn't involved in their lives always had the best pantry. They always had the best snacks. They always had a multitude of different cereals. It was always that way, and it was great. I get what she's saying, but I don't think it's a good thing, but it's the truth.
So, I'm grossly generalizing, but, on the other hand, I think I'm observing a trend. The breakdown of the family, the sort of permitting, getting out of commitments and not seeing things through. And I think where we are today is in a habit of not trusting that you can get through a bad period with a spouse or a partner.
Yep.
and see it through to the end. We are now wired to get out. And I've done that myself many times. And when I look back, I say, the one marriage that I got out of, I really think I shouldn't.
Yeah, and I'll see people get this conflated too, because she's saying like, oh, we have a hard time making the commitment. No, it's not guys. It's for the most part women at a much higher rate that are the ones filing for divorce. Even in lesbian couples, they have a higher rate of divorce than man and man couples, so gay couples. And it's not a surprise. I think it's like 78% for lesbian couples now versus gay men is like 25%. So even if you look at the LGBTQ community, you'll see that in relationships, women will be the ones that are going to be more likely to leave. And it's not a surprise in marriage, especially with no-fault divorce, when women are the ones that are the main beneficiaries of said divorce, right? So you got people dropping out of marriage because it's hard and it's a hard thing to do, and they get rewarded for dropping out. And the man gets punished ultimately. So, yeah, of course you're going to see more women opting out of something that they literally get paid to opt out of.
Have done that. I never really did any better. And, and I made these choices by rote because I was listening to this other, these sort of voices up there who are telling you what you're supposed to feel, what you're supposed to want. And now we have social media doing that. And, some of the things I did were really incredibly callous and very much anti-family formation, anti-life.
Yeah, and that's why you don't have a family.
And that was the theme of the essay. It just seems that we are being guided in that direction to move away from all of the kind of social mores that encouraged us and facilitated family formations and producing life.
Yeah.
Wow, it's quite a retrospective. And your perspective is really fascinating. And it kind of seems like everybody has to want to change that altogether in a way, because you do have these cases of men who have trouble finding a good partner, but want that more traditional life, and women who want to find a good partner, but have trouble finding someone like the women on that panel discussion you were describing.
That is such a lie, and we need to start talking about that. That is such a lie. If a woman wants a good man, there are good men that will cater to her, and she knows it. She just ignores them to go for the men that she wants. That's why I always say, date the people who want you, not the people that you want. And a lot of ladies are trying to chase after the same man that every woman wants, and then she acts surprised when she doesn't get selected.
A couple of them, their story was, I've been married, but my partner never wanted kids and wanted me to work. And, it wasn't something I could just do, or I couldn't find a stable relationship where it felt like it would be safe to bring a kid into the world and not end up a single mom supporting my child. I didn't want that picture for myself.
That's because you're dating certain men. Like,
where do we go from this point? Or maybe this is too soon in the conversation to ask next questions.
Well, interesting. Yeah. It's interesting because that is how it was, though.
Okay.
People got married and had children. That is the world that I grew up in. And so how did we get to a world where, and those were the same questions I asked myself, I don't want to get stuck. I'm worried that he'll run off.
Which is what happened to me in both of my marriages. It's exactly what happened to me. Is you do have children with someone, and then you're left alone to raise your kids by yourself. You have to figure that out because the other person did not maintain a commitment. I mean, in one case, it was drugs and alcohol, pornography and strippers. In another case, it was sex addiction. And again, that same kind of spiral down and out.
But that's exactly what I'm talking about. Let's just be completely honest here. We're all adults. If a man has a sex addiction or he's into strippers, he was into that before you married him. If a man likes drugs and alcohol, he was into that before you met him, and you knew that. And the other examples, he talked about, there are women who saying they are in relationships with men who don't want kids and want them to continue to work. You knew that before you married a man. And if you didn't do your due diligence enough to understand what you're getting yourself into. Let's just be completely honest here. The issue is there are women that are dating men trying to change the man and assuming if they have children with the man or if they date him for long enough, he's automatically going to change. It was never supposed to be that way. Women are supposed to see men as they are, not for how they can change them, as they are, see the direction their lives are going in, and choose to get in with the program that they already have if he already has something established for himself. You're not supposed to be trying to change a man out of his habits by having kids. There are certain habits that men are going to have and that you're just going to have to deal with. There are certain habits that people are going to have. If somebody likes alcohol when you meet them, they're probably going to like alcohol throughout the relationship. They might change, but if you understand how hard it is to change yourself, you'll understand how hard it is to change somebody else. And there are a lot of ladies who are getting with men that they don't align with, and after they have kids, they start to view the world differently. And now his drinking and drugs aren't fun. The fun guy that I was interested in at first. Now it's not fun. Now he's being irresponsible because we have kids, right? And I get it, but at the same time, you can't change people. So people are trying to date to change people and it don't work. And then they get upset that they don't get the results that they want. When really you're supposed to see a man already on his purpose, already driven, see the direction that he goes in. If he likes to drink, just realize what you want, what you're willing to put up with. Understand what you're willing to put up with and understand that it's probably not going to change. And there are a lot of ladies that are trying to change guys instead of getting on his program, and then they get upset when the guy doesn't change.
Of the relationship.
I guarantee you
And
she
so
left both of those
you-
marriages.
When you see evidence all around you of that marriage is falling apart despite, one person can want to maintain, but if the other person doesn't, how do we come back to something more stable when both parties, both men and women, and it's so broadly general when you say that, because that's not, those trends are there, but you can't distill the trend down to the individual. The individual stories are going to be different, but how do you get back to something where people value that connection if so many people don't? So many people are disillusioned and demoralized.
I think that I'm going to suggest it was women who created this problem. I'm not going to say that there haven't been ne'er-to-do men. In my own family, my grandfather's father ran off and created another family in Seattle, and left his mother with 9 children. But most of the men in my ancestry were family, fathers, family stayed intact, not necessarily happy, but very much attached to their families.
Yeah, fulfilled.
So how did this change? I would say it was feminine.
Fulfilled, at peace, being content. Those are all things that are much more sustainable, and they're much more important for longevity in life than just happiness. So they had things that, it's not happiness, but maybe you're just content. Maybe you're just at peace. Maybe you have stability. These are all things that you should start to value after you have kids, not just happiness.
Feminism that gave men even more permission to take off. I would say it's up to women to bring it back. I think it was women, and this is the issue that I take with this whole patriarchy assertion. I think that women really always have been the ones who controlled men.
Yep.
And all of the inventions and things that we have today were, some woman, I'm sick of going down to the river to wash my clothes, and then he invents a washing machine.
Exactly.
I'm tired of getting pregnant every year. Now we have the birth control pill.
Right.
And, all of these things actually serve to liberate women from
even if you look at like modern feminine hygiene products, those were all created by men and they're mostly manufactured by men. And it's exclusively a luxury for women. So if this patriarchy is so oppressive and it does nothing to serve women and it's only to benefit men, why are there so many things that men do to benefit women? And I think even some of the times we go to our own detriment and to do things that women say that they want that will for the sake of trying to make women happy. I think a lot of what you're seeing in society with pro-abortion and destroying the family through divorce court, all of these things were things that men allowed because this is what women said they wanted, and women said that they were unhappy with the other results. Now you're saying that this isn't really a good thing for society, so even if women say they don't want it, it's probably going to be reversed pretty soon. But a lot of the attempts, even the social order that we've created, is to benefit women. It's because men actually love women. And even the patriarchy goes to serve women. There are so many more benefits that women get from the quote-unquote patriarchy that men don't get or have access to. And it's because we recognize women as things that need to be taken care of.
An enormous
People
amount
that
of
need to be
work that
taken
they
care
used
of.
to have
Mhm.
that tethered them to the home and gave them, more freedom to go and out and work. But I would say that by sort of moving away from religious communities, questioning that, and then questioning the whole marriage and having children project gave men more license to behave badly and put women in this much more precarious position. They used to control men by you're living in a town where everybody knows if you're the male who's treating his wife poorly. That's
Shame.
also part of it. We're more
Shame.
atomized, we're less community oriented, and you can get by with a lot more. I mean,
Communal
even,
shame.
where I live in Brooklyn, I'm so convinced that I'm invisible, that I'm not always aware of my behavior. I'm not always aware that actually people might know who
And
I
that's the
am.
thing. I came from a smaller town, and I have recognized that is one of the things that's different with city people. City people tend to be a little bit more flashy. They go out of their way to do certain things because they want to be seen, because in the city it's harder to get attention. And also I've noticed that there's less communal shame. Like in the smaller town that I used to be in, 50,000, 30,000 people. I'm sorry, I had 30,000 people in it. You didn't want to be known as the town drunk. You didn't want to be known as the town, crackhead, or the person that was, because you have a community and these people know you and they know your family and they know your kids. Your kid's going to go to school with this person's kids. They're going to gossip about you. But in the city, because there's so many people, you can do more stuff that is degenerate or bad for society, even bad for yourself and society, and kind of hide under the cloak of just so many people being in one area. You could be at this bar one day, that bar one day, this bar the next day, and not really be tied to the things that you've done in the past, like you would be held accountable for those things in a smaller town. And I've noticed it does affect human behavior. So when she's talking about moving away from community and that affecting negatively how people behave, I 100% agree.
I really
And I also think that's one of the reasons why women, when they're younger, they want to move to bigger cities for more opportunities to be degenerate without having the responsibility of it attached to your name and being shamed.
do feel like I'm walking around in a vacuum. And that might lend itself to behaving in, rude ways that I wouldn't normally if I were living in a community where I knew that everybody knew me. So, we've sort of broken apart these communities that women actually held together. So where I grew up, my mother wasn't friends with everybody, but we knew everyone.
Yeah.
I knew everyone in the subdivision, which family lived in what house, how many kids they had. And, some sense of what the parents were like. Where I live now, I don't know. I don't have a clue.
Exactly.
And the only time I did in Brooklyn was when I was not working. And I was home all day, and I wound up becoming friends with someone who had a kid. And then she and I were roaming around the neighborhood together, and I got to know everybody. Because she was more connected to the neighborhood because she had a child.
Yeah, but
And
part of
then-
that also comes with property ownership. Like I just bought a house recently, and I've noticed an immediate difference between being in a place where people would predominantly rent versus being in a place where people have a 30-year mortgage and they're going to be here for the next 30 years. You have more of an incentive to know your neighbors, knowing that you're probably going to be next to each other for the next 30 years. They have kids. You have kids. You want to know each other because I want to know if you're somebody I got to be, aware of, or somebody I need to be warned of, or something like that. So you have more incentive to protect each other, watch each other's kids, because you're going to be in it together for a longer time period. So even just that, just having that information, I think that comes with property ownership, though. And I think that's something that's been lost that adds also to community. It's hard to build community when people don't have property or an investment into the community financially, especially, too. I think the family part is important, but I also think owning something is also important too. And I think when you own things, you're more likely to be more responsible of it, and what's more responsible of what's around it. So yeah.
My association with her connected me more, and when that we look back on and say that was one of the best periods of time in both our lives, when we got also after work, people were coming home from work and they would stop by our stoop to talk, and I knew the kids, and then the building got sold and we were all dispersed, and that was the end of that community and that golden period of time. So in my neighborhood, my mother had a few friends and they became lifelong friends, and they connected over needlework
Yep.
and watching each other's children.
Yep.
And they were also all around the same age, which is another issue we can talk about. If everybody is dating toward marriage, which in my experience, that was thrown away. Now you don't know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody was dating toward marriage and family formation. And so everybody's around the same age when they're having their children. And this creates a sort of, a community. If I could quote myself from one of my own comments, nothing marginalizes a woman more than going childless.
Yep.
You want to avoid getting stuck holding the bag, but then again, if you end up with nothing, you're even more endangered.
Yeah, there's so many things you just said that are interesting threads to pull on.
Part of the reason for that is because as women get older, their value is no longer in their beauty or vanity. Their value becomes about how well they can keep their family together. Do you have a potato salad that you like to bring to the cookout? Do you have help arrange family reunions to keep the family intact? Do you help the people in your community by being a nurturing person? Like, for example, my mother-in-law specifically, she helps the people in the community. She's a real lady. So now she doesn't have to depend on her looks to get attention or to get help from men. She just walks into a room in our community and everybody respects her, and every man in that room will fight for her on her behalf because she is that nurturing spirit in the community. So that's what you become valued by. And so, like, if you just have a bunch of money, no family, you're a 50-year-old woman, guys don't want to sleep with you as much anymore, where's your value lie? Nobody cares about your bank account. You live in a 5-bedroom house and you sleep in the only room. You sleep in one of the rooms. What's the point of having a big ass house if you ain't got nobody living in it with you? Eventually, so I'm just saying basically that ladies get a lot of their value later on in life based on how family oriented they are. And so if you don't have one later on in life, you're going to be less valued even by society.
The sense of anonymity that you describe, being out of touch with a community, feeling like you're just one of a bunch of people, but not part of any kind of meaningful collective. That is just like the internet. And you see all this terrible, it's like a hate machine. The whole, people are like this, and this condescending, self-righteous behavior that you see all over the place. The anonymity, I think it's hard to even fathom how much that's changed us as people, the sense that we aren't responsible and accountable to the people around us because those relationships are so fleeting or unimportant or insignificant.
And it's replaced religion.
Yep.
Right. I mean, that's inside of us. And so we throw away organized religion, which is where we used to meet our spouses, which was community. My parents were a sort of a mixed marriage. My dad was Jewish, my mother not. And they sent us to Sunday school in the morning so they could have some time alone. But I still remember, that was a community. I remember the characters at the church.
Yeah.
And, the feeling that we all belong to this place. And then people, then the wisdom is to get away from that because they're trying to control you and they're trying to curtail your freedom. But that is where you would have organically met someone to marry that you might have grown up alongside. and form some kind of, friendship that precedes marriage. Whereas, you throw that away. What were my options for meeting a man in 1978, 79, 80, which is, the time period when, I would have been like 18 to 21, marriageable age back in the day.
Mhm.
Bars,
Mhm.
bars and concerts,
Mhm.
where I'm high and I'm drunk,
Yep.
and
Already making a bad
the
decision. You're under the
wisdom is
influence.
to try this person out right away on the first night and then try to cobble some kind of relationship out of it.
Yep.
I was almost never able to do that. And I was also never really able to advocate for myself and say, well, this is what I want.
Mhm.
You know, no matter what the arbiters, this is how I refer to them in my novel, the arbiters of correct opinions were telling me, I didn't agree with it, but I continued to act upon it.
Mhm.
From, probably from the moment of I hit puberty, all I could think about was having babies.
Mm-hmm.
That was my instinct. That was what I wanted to do. I had a mother who was telling me that I didn't want to do this, and that's also part of my story, but I'm sure, other mothers were not saying that. Mine just so happened to be that way. You are not going to grow up and have, you are not going to have children. You're going to do this, and you're going to do this, and you're going to do
Mhm.
this. In other words, I'm going to fulfill what she didn't get to do
Yep. Bingo.
because she had children.
Yeah, and they think that the grass is greener on the other side because media is selling them a dream. So although like when she's talking about her mom, she's talking about a group of people that understood the duties of being in a marriage, even though the propaganda started to come in that you should be free. Some of them still understood the duties of being in a marriage, but they taught their kids, they taught their daughters that they shouldn't do it just because they thought that they would see another level of happiness if they convince their kids to do the things that they're seeing on pop culture and on the TV and on the talk shows that were going on at that time. So yeah, a lot of those ladies that were in those relationships and marriages, they became bitter because they thought that they were missing out on something. Well, really, they were probably living the most fulfilling life that they could possibly live. And the grass is definitely not greener on the other side. There are a lot of lonely nights. There are a lot of ladies that cry about these situations. There are a lot of people that just end up lonely. Like it's not a benefit. It's not a good thing for society or the people involved.
Mhm.
But the message inside the house was the message that was outside the house too. And so here I am with a guy that I've slept with but don't know. I don't know how to say I really want a committed relationship. There was something shameful and humiliating about that.
Mhm.
Then some years down the line, I have a friend saying, well, why can't you just tell him that you want to see him again? And I don't know how to do
because she
that.
knows the man don't want her. She's sleeping with men that she knows she can't get to keep a commitment with her. You get things you want from men that want you. She can't make any demands because she knows that these guys don't want her. That's the issue. But she wants to sleep with them because she wants their approval. She wants to feel accepted. She wants their validation. That's the word I'm looking for. To feel pretty or to feel however she wants to feel. That's why she's doing it. She just you can't get them as demands from a man that you know don't want you. He's just gonna leave. And so yeah, you're sleeping with people that don't want you instead of people who do want you, because you can, as a woman, you can make demands from a man that actually wants you. And as a man, he's most likely going to follow your demands depending on what they are, because men like to do things for the women we like. So if you with a man that don't like to do anything for you, he probably don't like you that much, or he probably don't see any longevity with you. That's just the truth.
And then interestingly enough, whenever I did say that, they would say, well, that's not what I want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Whereas in my mother's day, that's just what people did.
Mm-hmm.
So there was no shame in saying that's what you wanted.
Mhm.
That's just what people did. And if it didn't look like the relationship was going to be compatible for marriage, they would get out and go to the next one.
Mhm.
But in my experience, it was, well, I want this deep down inside. I'm afraid to say so. Which guy is going to be the one that I can do this with?
Mhm.
How do I even have that conversation? yeah,
Mhm.
it was incredibly confusing. And whenever I have brought up feminism as sort of confusing things and creating chaos, people will inevitably say, but you have choices now. Well, I don't agree. I think women always had
Yep.
choices, and there were plenty
Yep.
of people in my, universe, older generations. There was actually my grandmother's cousin was a lesbian, lived with her.
Yeah, this whole idea that women weren't allowed in the workforce, they were always teachers, doctors, or they were always nurses. They always were in the workforce, caretakers of children. And now that you see women more in the workforce, they're still choosing to do the same jobs that they were already doing previously. It was just that the women did have a choice. They just chose to be housewives. And now in the modern culture, they shame women out of their natural role to want to be housewives or nurturers of a family. Like, the feminists are the biggest misogynists in today's society. You won't hear a man talking down on a woman that has a commitment to her family. You'll never hear that coming from a man. It's always other women that are trying to downplay the role of a mother. I've heard a woman call being a mother of kids a slave. She believed that taking care of your own children means that you're a slave to the patriarchy, or you're a slave. She believed that cooking and cleaning your own house makes you a maid. And I'm just like, how insulting to the women who do go out of their way to do those jobs for the people that they love. How insulting to those women. But they don't even care that they're insulting those women, because they feel like they're above those women. And it's only to pursue more masculine pursuits. So they literally are saying, the feminist movement at this point is basically saying, we value the masculine pursuits over the feminine pursuits. And they're the biggest misogynists, in my opinion.
Partner never,
But
bought
women
a
always
house
had a
with her
choice. That's
and
the point I was trying to make. Women have always had a choice. They just chose to be housewives. And so now it's a little bit different because they're choosing to not do that anymore.
live like they were married. And my my grandmother would never admit that they were gay, but they were. Another friend of my mother's was a career woman who never worked and traveled the world. You never married and traveled the world.
Mhm.
So, and if you look honestly at history, you could see women doing all kinds of interesting things.
Exactly.
But what everyone was doing was getting married and having a family. And then, and then she would do something else when the kids were in school.
Bingo.
But, in my generation, we were fumbling around, not knowing how to get what we deep inside really wanted. And the men were like, well, now that I don't have to do this anymore, I'm not going to do it anymore. So I'm going to go back to suggesting that it was women who gave men permission to be irresponsible. And the lack of community oversight also lends itself to that. You are alone in the middle of nowhere and no one's really watching you.
Yep.
And I'm not going to say that that's great either, but if we have to decide what really is better for everyone, perhaps it would be more connection around community and not politics.
Yeah. Holy shit. It's almost as if the traditions that we've had that have gotten us to this point for thousands of years, cross-culturally, almost worldwide, had some validity and they worked. Who would have ever thought that this new experiment called feminism that we just tried, that seemingly ruined almost every part of society, and it's just not working? Who would have ever thought that? So you promote hoe culture amongst girls from 12 and up. The pop culture is horrible. You send them off to an indoctrination camp where all they get is women's studies, and they go $50,000 into debt for a degree. You encourage them to join the workforce. You never teach them how to treat a man. You only teach them what to expect from a man. You tell them to prioritize their work after they get out of college during their most fertile years, when they probably have the best chance of locking down the best man that they could probably find. You tell them not to settle, quote unquote settle, for men that are probably equal to them, just to pursue men that actually don't want them and give pointless sex away to the men that don't want them. And then hopefully there's some guy that's just going to come when she's about 30 and shoot a buzzer. So you take away divorce court, or you take away or you bring in no fault divorce. You bring in abortion. All of these things that make people avoid the consequences of their decisions. And then you act surprised when the family structure is getting destroyed. All of these things, all the way from seeing hoe culture at 12 to pursuing your career until you're 30. This is what we tell women to do. This is what we this is what we allow in our society to teach women that's going to give them happiness. And then you act surprised when the community is being destroyed and you don't see family anymore. People can make fun of her all they want, but I think that it was good for her to be honest on here. You're going to see a lot more of this in the future. I'm 30 years old now. It was all statistics and fun before, but now I've seen girls that were very pretty that I used to run track with. None of them have suitable mates. They're around 30 now. They pursue their careers, drinking margaritas on different beaches. Now they're about 30, and they don't have any suitable mates for children yet. And then if you think about it, the whole process, you got to find a man, you got to court each other. If you want to do it right, you got to get married, and then you finally have kids. And if you start that process at 30, at what age do you plan on having these kids? And you haven't even started the process yet because you can't find anybody. Oftentimes during that age, men are reaching their financial stride, beards are growing in, and instead of being rushed into a relationship by dating a woman their age is 30, these guys that are 31 are just choosing to date 27-year-olds. So the women who are at 30 are just stuck in limbo. And all these statistics that say 50% of women are going to be single and childless by 2030, I think it looks worse, in my opinion, from my own personal perspective, my anecdotal evidence. But at the end of the day, it certainly is, even from the facts, getting worse and worse and worse. And it's going to take a hard turnaround, but I think the turnaround is coming. People are miserable. The boomers are going out, so the next generation are going to be the people that had to deal with the consequences of this ideology, and they're going to be a lot harsher on it. Men are getting fed up, and they're just going to start saying no to feminism. And once men start saying no, there's nothing that women can really do to change that. And the more men you have that don't have families and commitments and investments into society, the less you're going to see men as a whole care about what women think, because a lot of the guys don't have a woman that they are living with, or, you know. And you'll find too that, as you know, I'm a married guy, but you'll also find, and this is just me wrapping it up here, you'll also find that when you're married, you have a different respect for what a woman brings that you don't have if you don't have a woman with you. And so a lot of these guys that don't have women and will probably never have women because the dating standard is so high is doing a disservice to women, because they don't understand the benefit of a woman and the value of a woman. So they're not going to value women. And when those men stop valuing women, if it becomes a majority or even a concentrated small minority, that's not going to have a good result for women campaigning for men to do the things they want us to do for them in society. So you're going to see a big reverse in this very soon, because what we're doing is unsustainable. Let me know in the comments below if this video was a W or L, and give me the HBO special. That's Help Brother Out special. Hit the like and the subscribe button for more content. Till next time.